Hello everyone, we are Group 5 and I am Gregorio Camo III and we will be presenting my family tree as a scenario and reference in application of some of the provisions of the Civil Code governing the rules on legitime. As previously discussed by our Professor Attorney Ida, according to Article 886, legitime is that part of the testator's property which he cannot dispose of because the law has reserved it for certain heirs who are therefore called compulsory heir. The first paragraph of Article 904 says that the testator cannot deprive his compulsory heirs of their legitime except in cases expressly specified by law. As a general rule, the testator cannot deprive his compulsory heirs. The only way to deprive the compulsory heirs of their legitime is by expressly disinheriting them in a will wherein the legal cause therefore shall be specified. Also, the testator cannot compel his compulsory heirs to accept or to receive such legitime. It means that the compulsory heirs can either accept it or reject it. For no one can compel another to receive or accept a gift. There are three systems affecting the legitime. Here in the Philippines, we are governed by the system of the legitime or partial reservation, where a part is for legitime and a part is for pre-portion. This is the illustration of my family tree. As you can see, on the upper line, these are my grandparents. On the second line, these are my parents and their siblings. And on the third line, these are my siblings including me. And on the last line, these are my children and the children of my siblings. I am one of the 6 children of Gregorio Jr. and Leonor. They are both living in the United States, and I have 5 siblings, and 4 of them are working and living abroad. The eldest is 46 years old, and the youngest 28 years old. I am the second to the youngest. The provisions governing the compulsory heirs can also be found in Article 887, and according to the Book of Paras, there are 2 kinds of compulsory heirs: the primary and the secondary compulsory heirs. The primary compulsory heirs are those mentioned in paragraph 1, 3, 4, 5 of Article 887, and they are legitimate children and descendants with respect to their legitimate parents and ascendants, the widow or the widower, acknowledged natural children and natural children by legal fiction, other illegitimate children referred to in Article 287, while the secondary compulsory heir are those mentioned in paragraph 2 of Article 887. They are the legitimate parents and ascendants. And take note that they inherit only in default of paragraph 1. The father or the mother of illegitimate children is also a secondary compulsory heir, but also as provided for in Article 903. They inherit only in default of paragraph 1 and 3. And applying those provisions in my family tree, my primary compulsory heirs are my children and my wife, and my secondary compulsory heirs are my parents. My parents, as secondary compulsory heirs, cannot inherit in accordance to Article 887, considering the presence of my children and wife. And with respect to my siblings, they are not mentioned in Article 887 as compulsory heirs. This is the picture of my family. My wife, Maria, she's a native of Bataan. We've met in 2003. in Fatima College of Nursing in Valenzuela, and eventually we became sweethearts. And after our graduation in March 2007, together we took and passed the nursing board exam in the same year and took oath as registered nurses. Thereafter, she started working at the hospital in Bataan while I entered the government service and underwent 6 months training and to be deployed in Mindanao. Luckily, after several months, I was then reassigned back here in Manila. And in 2012, we decided to tie the knot and our marriage took place at the local of Bago Bantay in 2013. And we were blessed with 4 kids: Kaden, 10 years old; Arya, 5 years old; Ashin, 2 years old; and Aori, 1 year old. This is the illustration of my family tree in connection to my wife and my 4 children. And applying the rules on legitimes, considering that I have more than 2 legitimate children and a surviving spouse as shown in the slide, the provision with respect to the legitime can be found in Article 892, paragraph 2 and 3. It says that if there are 2 or more legitimate children or descendants, the surviving spouse shall be entitled to a portion equal to the legitime of each of the legitimate children or descendants. In paragraph 3, the legitime of the surviving spouse shall be taken from the portion that can be freely disposed of by the testator. This pie illustrates the respective shares of legitimate children, surviving spouse, and free portion. First, deduct the share of the legitimate children, which consists of 1/2 of the estate, and divide it to equal share in accordance to their number. In this scenario, I have 4 legitimate children, so 50% divided to 4 is equal to 12.5% each of my legitimate child. As to the share of the surviving spouse, she shall be entitled to the portion equal to the share of each of the legitimate children. In this scenario, the spouse is entitled to 12.5% share, which is equal to each of the legitimate children. The share of the surviving spouse is to be deducted to the free portion share. Therefore, from 50% share of the free disposal share, it became 37.5% because of the deduction of the spouse share, which is 12.5%. This is our last slide. What about if the person dies without a will? According to Article 960, legal or intestate succession takes place if a person dies without a will or with a void will, or one which has subsequently lost its validity. In this case, considering that legitimate children and surviving spouse are left by the decedent without having a will, intestate succession takes place, and insofar as to the partition of shares are concerned, the provisions of Article 996 will govern. It states that if a widow or widower and legitimate children or descendants are left, the surviving spouse has in the succession the same share as that of each of the children. Intestate shares, when 2 or more legitimate children and surviving spouse 1. Consider the spouse as one legitimate child. 2. Divide the estate by the total number of intestate heirs, and the result would be equal shares among the surviving heirs as illustrated in the pie. So my wife and my 4 children has co-equal shares of 20% each. And that's all of our report on behalf of my group mates, uh, Sir Jeric Valoria, Miss Vanessa Santiago, Miss Janet Tismo, and me, Gregorio Escambo III. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.